All right, everybody. On today's episode of Green with Envy, I sit down with our Knicks correspondent in the field, Mr. Matt Liptak, to preview the Celtics Eastern Conference Semifinals matchup with Jaylen Brunson, the flopper in the New York Knicks. You know the deal. Let's lock in. What's good, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Green with Envy. It's your boy Greg Manakis checking in to steal from Will. How you doing? How you living? We are going to give you an update on Will's whereabouts later on in the pod, probably at the end. Just so you know, it's all good news. Will texted me. He said, dude, you made it sound like someone fucking died on the last podcast. He just wants to let everybody know that everything is good with him. We can give you a little update on there, but he is probably going to be out for a couple of weeks. So I appreciate you all hanging in there with just me. Today, I do welcome in our most referenced friend on the pod, the one and only Matt Liptak. Liptak, welcome to the show. Appearance number 2.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here. I think it's been 2 or 3 years. So happy that we finally had this opportunity, a playoff matchup. It's been a long time coming.
We've been talking about could the Celtics and Knicks meet up in the playoffs for a couple of years now. The last time you were on the pod, can you recall what was going on with the Knicks at that time? I can't.
I think it was the first Randall-led playoff run for the Knicks, or coming right up around playoff time for that team. So Knicks were surprisingly good, a pesky 4 or 5 seed, looking to make a little noise.
And this is before Brunson became Jaylen Brunson, right?
Yeah, this was before Brunson was on the Knicks.
This was before. Wow. So who was the point guard then?
Oh, it's a good question. That was when we were in point guard purgatory.
Okay. That's a tough time. So, yeah, I mean, it's been a while. Obviously, things have changed a lot for the Knicks since Brunson got to New York, as I talk through a burp here. Before we talk about this upcoming series, which I'm super excited, hopefully we get to watch a few games together in person. But I just wanted to hear from you what you learned about the Knicks in that grueling 6-game series that you had against the Detroit Pistons, which is a very surprising series, and then just what the current temperature check is amongst Knicks fans.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like what we learned in this series is everything that we saw and expected out of the Knicks over the course of the season has been proven true in the playoffs as well. That series was an exact microcosm for what the Knicks season was, which was you saw flashes of brilliance of them putting it all together. You had that fourth quarter run in game 1 where they scored 21 straight points. The offense was clicking, the defense was clicking, and it was like, oh, this is what it looks like when all of the talent is together, playing the right way. This is the vision for the Knicks. And they come back in game 2 and they don't have it and they don't piece it together. And the entire series went like that, off and on. Knicks would go on a run, and then next quarter they lose their rotations and you get a full quarter of open threes for the Pistons. You'd get a quarter of sloppy turnovers or fully stagnant, or Cat going missing for a half, where they were just never able to put it together for multiple quarters, let alone a full game. So they were winning, but you're still really banking on the potential of them piecing it together without them actually ever doing it.
Yeah, and it's funny because I'm not a Knicks fan, but I really enjoyed watching the team last year, and our relationship, as you know, I've known you for over a decade now. It was a lot more like when we were younger, you being from New York and me being from Boston. We used to give each other a lot of shit about each other's teams, and over the years, we've kind of like almost started rooting for the other teams, just to some degree, just because we've become such good friends, right? And I've just wanted the Knicks to be successful, just so that we had more to talk about, we could hang out more, we could watch more games together. So in this weird way, I've like really started following the Knicks over the last 3 years, and coming into this season, I just didn't believe that the ethos of the team after trading Randall and DiVincenzo, the Nova Knicks, Hartenstein was such a big part of that squad. And seeing, I think you even said this, right, that they were at once a blue collar team and now they've become a white collar team. And I thought that was like the perfect way to capture this series against the Pistons, because the Pistons were putting on their boots, they were putting on their hard hats, and they were going to the construction site. And the Knicks were showing up, with their clipboards and whatnot, trying to project manage. And it was just like very different to see how much Knicks basketball has changed. What are your thoughts on, just like for the audience out there? I pretty much know, but what are your thoughts on how that has changed throughout this past year to last year?
Yeah, good question. I think the blue collar to white collar is a fair metaphor for it. Though I do have a hard time calling any team that Jaylen Brunson's on white collar just because of how tough he plays, even with the flopping stuff that we'll get to at some point in the call. But last year they were a team that just out hustled, out gritted everybody, and played hard 24/7. And that was the Tibbs ran them into the ground, but everybody on that team always played hard. They played a ton of close games. Even thinking back to the playoff series last year against the Sixers, it was a lot like the playoff series this year against the Pistons, where every game was tough, every game was physical, and most games came down right to the last minute. I think the difference this year is us trying to move to bringing in Cat, bringing in Bridges, wanting to go 5 out on offense, giving up some of your toughness, and definitely giving up being a defense first team, where just the whole attitude of the team feels different. The upside that you are getting on offense doesn't feel like it offsets what you are giving up on defense, and that overall feeling of toughness and grittiness that the team's always led with. Like the Pistons this year, last year, any series that a team was coming in to play the Knicks, that team felt like we are going to leave this series beat up. Whether we win or we lose, we are going to leave bruised and bloodied.
Mm-hmm.
That is just not who the Knicks are this time around.
All right, when we're going to see a lot more on how that physicality ends up playing out in two teams that are probably going to be really thankful that they're not facing the physical defenses that they just faced in round one, because the Celtics, kind of the same thing here. Like, after playing the Magic, I welcome a series in which both teams are just like, let's just see who's more skilled. Who's gonna win? Like, I don't want any injuries. The Celtics obviously coming in with a ton of injuries that we'll talk about here in a little bit. But I do have a note from that I wrote down in my notes, that you actually have this written into your contract for the appearances that you're going to make in this series. You have a note here, a clause that says we have to start by talking about Jaylen Brunson, and start with a segment of Jaylen Brunson appreciation, the NBA's clutch performer of the year. So the floor is yours, my friend. Tell me all about Jaylen Brunson and how much you love him.
I truthfully wake up every day thankful that Jaylen Brunson is my point guard, the point guard of the New York Knicks. And I know some of that is 15 years without a real point guard on the Knicks. Makes it extra special this time around. But man, he is just such a joy and such a pleasure to watch. I feel like a lot of that got lost in the first series because we did have a little bit of foul baiting, extra maybe foul baiting going on in game 2 that got some attention, and that just kind of became the storyline. But when you followed JB through that series, especially later games, game 5 and game 6, where he was going off late game, fourth quarters, you got to see everything that was special about him without any of the worrying about flopping or foul baiting, where it was just, he was taking over. He was doing it in different ways. He was facilitating, he was playmaking. And that, the footwork, which is his key, his differentiator, was really just on a different level. If you just look at the last 2 big plays that he made in game 6 down the stretch, the first one with about a minute left where he's going baseline under the hoop, back and forth, should have fallen over a couple times, should have stepped out of bounds, somehow worked his way back to get the open layup through just unbelievable footwork. Master technician at the top of his craft. And then, of course, the last shot. Sar Thompson was fantastic defending Brunson all series. I think not a well-coached series by Bickerstaff at all, in my opinion, but he took Thompson out of the game with about 4 or 5 minutes left after the Pistons had went on a big run that unlocked the Knicks' big run that
Do you
allowed
remember
them
who
to
we
win.
put in? Did he put in Hardaway?
Schroeder.
Schroeder. Okay.
Yep. And immediately Knicks went on their 11-1 run following that. So big problems with that. But all that to note, just Thompson was giving Brunson a hard time, as hard of a time as anybody can give him, because he's got the things that you need to defend Brunson. He's got the length and the athleticism. With that last play where Brunson just stops on a dime, crosses back over, Thompson is out of the screen to wind up with the open shot, was just like, is everything that is perfect about Brunson. It makes him so unique and so special as a player. It's just fun to watch.
Dude, I'm surprised every time Jaylen Brunson misses a big shot. I just he obviously he's the NBA's clutch performer of the year, but like the touch that he has, like you called him the master technician, that one play under the baseline, his center of gravity must be just like its own force. He's like, it's his own planet, right? It's just like things revolve around him, because he almost fell down. And then the torque that he's able to do to get back into balance and then finish like with power at the rim was really impressive. But yeah, man, he's been one of my favorite players to watch. Foul baiting aside, he's unbelievable. I've compared Jaylen Brunson to Peyton Pritchard, which I know probably pisses you off, but like Peyton Pritchard, the way that he has played this year, like he's doing more things where like if you showed Peyton Pritchard tape and Jaylen Brunson tape side by side, you could be like, oh, like this little white guy probably studies this guy over here, because he does a lot of the same footwork stuff. He plays off of 2 feet in the paint. He gnashes on the baseline, doesn't give up his dribble. He's not as good as Brunson. He's not as skilled as Brunson. He's not even as big as Brunson. Brunson's not a big guy, but Pritchard's even smaller than him. Brunson's what, like 6'2", 6'2.5"?
He's like 6'1".
Is he really? Okay.
Yeah, 6'2" is probably a little bit of a stretch.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to stand next to that guy because I've claimed to be 6 feet for many years. But I think with Brunson, you mentioned how Thompson gave him a really difficult time in that series, and he certainly did. Who are the other guys this year, as someone who's watched almost every Knicks game, who are the other guys that you felt like actually gave Brunson, or made him work? Because that's what Brunson said. He said, this guy made me work in this series.
Yeah, it is the long, athletic perimeter defenders. I thought Dyson Daniels gave him a really hard time this year. I thought he defended Brunson better than anybody all season. I think our matchups against the Thunder, you saw it. Dort and anybody else that they are switching on to him, you saw it and you felt it. I think that while it wasn't clearly visible in Knicks Celtics games this year, but I also think Celtics probably weren't that challenged because the games were all such, at least the first 3 games were such blowouts so early on. But I also think that the Celtics length has given him some trouble in the past. And I think combination of Derek White, Drew Holiday, and either of Tatum or Jaylen Brown on him have done a decent job in the past too. But that is kind of the archetype or the prototype for what you need to at least try to slow him down or try to wear him out as the game goes along. So at least make him work hard from first whistle on.
Definitely. Yeah, let's get into some X factors, because I think some of the thoughts that I have on Brunson will kind of come up here in this next segment. We're going to talk about the X factors in this series, and I've been asking you the questions, but I know that you wanted to kind of get some Celtics, Celtics insight. So what questions do you have for me regarding like X factors that you're kind of seeing as potential X factors from the Knicks point of view?
Yeah, would love to get it from your perspective. And I know we're coming into a series where Celtics are minus 900 favorite. Everybody is expecting them to win and to win large, right? 4 games, 5 games, maybe is what the betting market is saying. And I think that matches kind of the eye test for what we've seen from the teams too. So from your perspective, I'd love to understand, what are the things that you feel like are those X factors for the Celtics that have potential to swing one way or another?
Well, what was really surprising to me about the Magic series, and the Magic just have given us trouble over the last couple of years, the way that they defend And can the Knicks actually learn anything from the way that the Magic defended the Celtics? Obviously, personnel is different, but the way that they were able to limit the amount of 3-pointers that the Celtics were taking, the Knicks have not been able to do that in the 4 matchups. There's this crazy stat that I got from NBA.com here. So over the 4 regular season games in which the Celtics swept the Knicks, the Celtics made 39 more 3-pointers than the Knicks. That's tied for the 4th biggest differential for any regular season series in the 46 seasons of the 3-point line. So, like, can the Knicks watch the tape that the Magic just put forth and say, we actually have some of the personnel that can make the Celtics lives living hell? I think the biggest issue that I see is I don't think that the Knicks are going to be able to do that for 48 minutes, given the lack of depth that's on the roster. I think that was kind of sneaky about the Magic. Even though they didn't have any offensive players, they were able to go like 8 deep with solid defenders out on the court. So do the Knicks actually have the depth in order to implement a game plan that the Magic just put forth?
It's a great question. Can they learn anything? Can they replicate it? I thought the Magic's switching ability and therefore ability to keep bodies on bodies for the entire part of that series was huge. I think that impacts what you saw from the Celtics and their 3-pointers made and how effective they were across the board. I agree that concept is probably the biggest X factor in the series. And I think the underlying kind of the sub bullet of that is just, where does Cat fit in defensively? And I think those two things, there's a lot of the same story in those two. The Knicks personnel with Cat and Brunson on the floor, you lose that concept of switchability. And I think we saw it this season. The Celtics are going to get Cat into action, into high pick and rolls every play of the game. Maybe. I mean, not an exaggeration. They're going to try to get him in action 50 times a game, where they want his man in the pick and roll. This season, the Celtics absolutely abused him in all of those scenarios. Cat wants to drop. The Celtics are not going to hesitate to pull up. And it's not a shot you can give them, at least most of their players. Cat wants to get aggressive, or we switch, and he's been getting beat off the bounce. And Knicks are slow on the help, slow on the closeout, slow on the rotation off of that. And to the Celtics' credit, I think this is where the Celtics absolutely thrive. The ball gets moving. They are able to find the open man and line up that 3 in the play exactly the way they want it to. But that is what our season series looked like, where the Celtics were shooting uncontested 3s over and over and over again. So your stat is not surprising, because that's what it felt like watching those games.
Yeah, here's another stat on Towns in the pick and roll. I don't know if you've seen this in your research. The Celtics put Towns in 134 pick and rolls over the 4 games in the regular season, the most of any defender against Boston this season. 51 pick and rolls defended per 100 possessions against the Celtics for Karl-Anthony Towns. And it's just like, when you especially when you have the A-B comparison of what we just saw with the Magic, where they put out Wendell Carter, who's a very switchable big, right? And he's able to at least hold up on the perimeter and not make the rest of his team get in rotation. I think that was what was special about the Magic's defense. Towns just can't stay in front of anybody. He can do some things on defense, but even when he stays in front of people, he has a propensity to foul, right? So now you're putting one of your best offensive players in a position where he's going to get in foul trouble. And that's where the lack of depth, and where like Hartenstein last year, in a lot of ways, I thought it was just a better fit for this team. As you know, even though Towns is, on paper, a better player, when you think everything in consideration, I think Hartenstein just made more sense for what the team was trying to do. Yeah, I mean, that's all I got on that, though.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is going to be the stories of the series. I think if the Knicks want to have any chance in the series, figuring out a solution for that is a must-have, because the Celtics have showed they're going to run it over and over again, and they have been successful over and over again, and they're not going to stop until we've got a way to figure it out. What that looks like, is it Cat figuring out how to get some stops on the perimeter? Is it anything else that Dibs want to pulls out of his bag? Are we pre-switching to try to get Cat out of the action? Are we aggressive on the hedge and trying to get OG to be really aggressive underneath and hoping we're not hitting too much over the top? Is it a combination? Are we switching things and trying to throw out different looks each quarter of every game? I don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but that is the thing that the Knicks need to answer if we want to have any chance.
Yeah, I think, a guy you just brought up, we haven't talked about yet, OG, who I think for me is an X factor, somebody that I'm watching in this series because I think he actually does a really good job guarding Tatum. The biggest issue in today's NBA is you can't just have one great defender and expect him to shut somebody down because of the way that teams just give up the switch, right? And I think that happens too often. I think in this series, you'll probably see a lot more of like Towns trying to force Tatum away from the basket, and anytime they go pick and roll, I think they'll hard hedge. But Towns isn't even good at that, right? He gets beat. Like people split that pick and roll when he tries to hard hedge so much on him. Cade did that, like 25 times in that series. And they're like, there were a couple moments where Towns actually showed up. Like, what was that, game 3, maybe, where he made some big plays down the stretch against Cade?
Yeah, so there was both of those. He got split by Cade too many times on the hedge, but he actually did have a couple big defensive plays, both in game 1, late in the game, where the Knicks really shut it down collectively on defense. And even in game 6, where they had the comeback, he had a huge steal late in the game as well. So again, like he showed flashes of tension. I'm long. If I'm on my man, I'm willing to make plays, and we can get some deflections. Do we have any ability to do that consistently is the question.
And then, when you think about apples and oranges of the Pistons offense and the Pistons bigs and their capabilities to stretch out to the 3-point line in the Celtics, like it's just going to be a lot different.
Yep.
Right. Having to get out to Horford, having to get out to Porzingis. And one of the things that I'm just thinking about is what are you guys going to do with Kristaps Porzingis? Because he didn't play, I believe, in the first 2 matchups against you guys, and then he went off in the final matchup against you guys, where Celtics were fully healthy, but Jaylen was very limited with that knee injury. Is there any adjustment that you could see the Knicks making in terms of who is actually starting guarding Porzingis? Because is it going to be Cat, I guess, is my question.
It's going to be Cat early on. I think what can we do to shift? What can we do differently is a great question. I think the big question I have about how Tibbs approaches the series, maybe just different ways we can operate overall, is are we going to see more of the 2 big lineup? We saw very little of it in the regular season, and a lot of that was Mitch was hurt and really slow coming back from injury. I think we saw less than 40 minutes collectively all season. We saw it a little bit more in stretches in the first round, but that also wasn't consistent. It was really game to game. I think that is something that is a potential solution, or something we at least need to attempt, kind of another thing to pull out of the bag if possible, because I think Mitch completely changes the way that you anchor your defense. On the flip side, he's going to change the way you have to run your offense as well. But I don't think that is necessarily a bad change for us, especially considering what we've seen in our matchup so far, which is we can't go blow for blow. And the concept of figuring out how to better anchor your defense, potentially having an outsized impact, I think is definitely there. So having Mitch as your rim protector, having Mitch pulled up in a lot of that action and him around to guard KP, even when it's stretched out, I think potentially changes the equation quite a bit for the Knicks. The question on the other side is, do the Knicks have the ability to run an offense with somebody who is a liability to the extent that Mitch is? And I think last year, even though you had a different team, they showed they were able to still run their offense effectively, not to the degree they can when you run in a Cat 5 lineup with your starting 5. But I think that's a trade-off we're going to have to at least consider and see if that is able to slow down the Celtics offense at all.
So Mitch played about 16 and a half minutes per game against the Pistons. He missed a game. Did he miss one game or no? He didn't miss any. So
no, I don't think so.
16 and a half minutes per game. How many of them would you say were played in the double big?
I would guess about half of that off the top of my head.
So here's just what I'm thinking, like from a Knicks fan perspective, and if we're talking about an adjustment that you want to see Tibbs make. When you look, if we're still using the Magic series as like film study for us to learn from,
Mhm.
if you can get to the end of the game, you guys have the better closer. Jaylen Brunson's the best closer in this series. He's been the best clutch player all season. He's terrifying. If it comes down to crunch time and it's within 5 points, like, I don't feel great. I still think the Celtics will probably win those games, but I think that's your best chance as a Knicks team, is just to have the ball in Jaylen Brunson's hand going toe for toe with whoever's on the other side. That's what would give me the most confidence. And the only way I think you're going to be able to do that is if you slow the game down, you muck it up, you bang hard for offensive rebounds. And that's what Mitchell Robinson can do, right? He can lead the league in offensive rebounds if he was playing 25 to 30 minutes a game. He hasn't been healthy. Do you think Mitch can actually play 25 to 30 minutes a game at this point?
I think so. It's one of those things, you haven't seen it, so it's hard to say with any degree of confidence until you've actually seen it. But he has looked healthy when he's played this year. As you were going through him coming back from injury and towards the end of the season, he was still looking winded. He was looking like he was working his way back. I didn't get a lot of that in round one. And to your point, he was only playing 16 minutes. So going 16 to 25 plus is a big jump. But it does seem like he's worked himself back to where he's got the ability to go 20, to go
He
25.
looks good when he's moving out there. He doesn't look like he's limited.
Yeah. I don't know if you saw this, but in the last two games, Pistons started pulling out the hack-a-Mitch throughout the game. And that was an issue. He shot, I think, 30% from the line in the series. So
that's gonna limit your minutes.
Yeah. Yep. There's no way around it. If you're shooting 30% and the other team's willing to say, hey, as soon as we get into the bonus, if Mitch is in, we're just gonna foul him every play. It's another one. Bickerstaff did not really deploy it correctly and almost ended up with all of their big men with 5 fouls heading into the fifth quarter because he didn't pick the right person to hack a Mitch. But the logic behind it was there, and it's another thing that could be a concern.
All right, we've covered a lot here so far. We're about 27 minutes in. We still haven't talked about health, which I think I'm glad that we've held off on health, because that's going to be a huge X factor in this series. One other thing I was just thinking about is, from a Knicks perspective, right? We've guarded Towns mostly with Jason Tatum and Drew Holiday. We haven't put too many centers on Towns because, as you mentioned, like, will the Knicks pre-switch? The Celtics pre-switch all the time, right? And with Tatum, especially if Towns can be the bully that we know he can be when the Knicks commit to giving him the ball in the post, can Towns get Tatum in foul trouble? And will Tatum's wrist injury, this is the first time we're talking about health now, actually affect him on defense where he won't be able to bang with Towns? Same thing with Drew Holiday. Drew Holiday has a hamstring injury. Will he be able to dig into the ground and actually exert the force necessary to stand up a Karl-Anthony Towns like Boogie Cousins did back in the day?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. It's another one of the stories when I think about what things need to be true if the Knicks were actually competitive in this series and pushed it to a couple games. I think the Celtics' health is a big potential outlier there. Another one of those X factors. I mentioned Holiday early as somebody who's just given the Knicks a hard time defensively across the board because of that exact ability, which is he could switch on to Brunson or he can switch on to Cat and be comfortable. I think losing that potentially would be a big blow to the team, especially if you're feeling it in a couple of areas. Would love to get a Celtics fan perspective, as the team was banged up a little bit, but now had a couple of days off. Are we feeling like that is a risk or a concern as you come into the series?
I'm not worried about Tatum. He's tough as nails, man. I know he gets like a lot of shit in the media just for, he's a pretty boy, right? So like, I think he just gets a lot of shit in the media, and he's so tough, man. He never misses games. It was shocking to me that he ended up missing a game 2 against the Magic, because he plays in every single game that he can. Drew's injury is scary, man. Anytime you hear hamstring, especially somebody in their mid-30s, that's scary. And I believe he probably would have played if it were a do or die game. I think the Celtics were kind of just holding him out until it was absolutely necessary. My question is, will they deem game one absolutely necessary for Drew Holiday to play? I think last time I checked is he's on track, but kind of day to day still at this point. But it seems like he probably will play in game one. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't play in game one, though, because
Mm-hmm.
until it's necessary to play Drew Holiday and put him into situations where he's going from guard and Jaylen Brunson, navigating screens, switching on to Towns and switching on to these really physical people, Drew is a problem, as you mentioned. He's like what Knicks fans probably wish Josh Hart could be, right? Like in a perfect world, that's what Josh Hart would be, as a Drew Holiday. And I don't know, man. I'm definitely concerned about Drew. I'm no longer concerned about Jaylen's knee. He showed me in round one that he's going to be able to play through it, and Tatum's just tough as nails. But Drew's the guy I'm worried about.
Okay. Okay. That feels like a good outlook for the Celtics overall. So, kind of sticking on that question, if there's a world in which the Knicks are winning a couple games here and making the series competitive, what are you think the storylines that need to be true? Either Celtics having some deficiency somewhere or Knicks overperforming somewhere versus what they've looked like the rest of the season?
I think it comes from Knicks players playing up to like the on paper potential coming into this season. I think it has to be Bridges. I think Bridges, he played great in game 6. He had a few really nice moments in that series against the Pistons, but he also had some moments where he wasn't so great. And they need Bridges to be a guy that can at least look at Derek White and say, I'm going to play you even in this series. At
Yep.
this point, I think Derek, like, I have so much confidence in Derek White. Bridges doesn't even seem like a player on the same level as him, but I think he has the potential to be. And I think that, like, whenever it's funny, whenever I think about these teams and I convince myself teams might be able to hang with the Celtics, I'm just like, how good is Derek White really? You know, like how good is Jaylen Brown really? Like, I want to think Jaylen Brown is a top 15 guy, but then there are times I'm like, is he a top 30 guy? Like, I don't know. Like, there are some moments where there are certain guys in the Celtics, like Al Horford's almost 40 years old, man. Like, but like they play so well together. And
Yep.
Jaylen, for example, like I'm the biggest Jaylen Brown fan out there. He's a 16 game player. He like the
Mhm.
moment it turns playoffs, I want JB on my team because he's going to give it his all. He's going to be an absolute monster out there. He's going to play 94-foot defense and he's going to hit big shots, man. Like his free throws are starting to fall now. His 3-pointers starting to fall. Not really worried about it, but I think it's all about the Knicks.
Yep.
Can Bridges play up to a Derek White level? Can
Mhm.
OG give Tatum problems? Just like
Yep.
Thompson made Brunson work, can
Yep.
he make Tatum work? And
Mhm.
then I think, Brunson, obviously, I just pencil him in for being special. And then it's Towns.
Yep.
Can Towns be the guy that you hoped you were getting?
Yep. Yeah, I'm looking at it the same way. It's funny. I had some similar notes written down about Bridges overall. I thought his game 6 was as good of a game as he's played as a Nick. I think, and I'm counting just off of my head as I watched, I think he finished 8 buckets at the rim in the game. We'll say at least 8, which is the most that I can remember watching him play in a game. I'm sure we could look that up somewhere. But reflected how he actually played, which was he was willing to take a guy off the dribble. He was willing to take the ball to the hoop, which we've seen so little of this season. And it felt like a piece of his game that was missing, right? He's just been kind of sitting in the corner waiting for Cat and Brunson to do something and seeing what comes to him as opposed to going and taking it. That element changed a piece of our offense for sure.
Mm-hmm.
If that is something that he can pull through, I think potentially big impact there. He also has been getting better and better defensively, I think, as the season went along. And I thought he had some really good moments defensively against the Pistons as well. I had noted down for the Knicks to actually win this series, we would need to say at the end of the series that Bridges was a better player than Jaylen Brown. So I won up to not Derek White as over your Jaylen, but I think we're thinking about it a similar way, which is you need those players, the Knicks role players, to step up to a greater degree.
We talked about the Celtics health. Do we have any issues with the Knicks health at this point? I know Brunson has been dealing with an ankle injury, but it's clearly not affecting him. Is there anybody else that you're worried about?
No, this is the healthiest the Knicks have been probably all season. and going back to where we were towards the end of last season and last playoff, this is the healthiest the Knicks have been in recent memory. So you've got Jaylen Brunson, he's banged up, but because of how he plays and who he is, there will always be some extent of that. He's going to play through it. He'll be good. You mentioned earlier, Mitch is still working his way back from injury, so he might be a little light on the minutes, but he's healthy. Besides that, the Knicks are as healthy as can be. All of those minutes played this year, as opposed to the minutes police worry that it was going to wear this Knicks team down, like we saw some of last season. It feels like they are at their healthiest point. And for a lot of the players, they're playing some of their best ball this season.
And that's what you want coming into this like matchup that we've been hoping for as friends over the last couple of years, is that both teams are coming in relatively healthy. And I think like the fact that everyone will probably be available at some point in this series, like I would be shocked if Drew Holiday didn't play at all in this series, right? Like Porzingis last year, Celtics fans just didn't get enough of Porzingis. The fact that we had him for a full round, like, oh my God, full round of the playoffs, Kristaps Porzingis played. It was pretty great. All right. Next topic I want to get to here, because it's super late and I appreciate you hanging on with me. Players most likely to piss off the other's fan base. And I kind of want to do it from like, you think about your team, I'll think about my team, and them pissing off your fan base. Okay, so I'll go first. I think the guy that Knicks fans will probably get most pissed off at is Luke Kornet in this series. I think that there's like a real chance Luke Kornet like switches on to, he's like guarding Josh Hart and like blocking Josh Hart at the rim, giving Towns some issues, getting offensive rebounds, because Kornet was on the Knicks at one point, right? And he's not the same guy that he was back then. Luke Kornet has turned into like a real serviceable big in the NBA. And I don't know how much he'll play in the series. I think a lot of it's going to have to do with if the Knicks make an adjustment, because the Celtics go a lot of double big. Will the Knicks actually try and bang with us? Luke didn't play great in the first series. That's why I'm a little bit concerned about his ability to hang as the playoffs go on. But that would be my first guess. And he also kind of trolls a little bit. He does his he does that celebration that he does. He also is starting to bark like a dog at this point. He's just like super goofy. And I could see Knicks fans getting pissed off at it.
Yep. I could absolutely see that as well. And I know he didn't play much in the Magic series, but he did some work on the Knicks in our regular series matchup. So he was a pain in that series. So I can absolutely see that happening. My first one on the Knicks is I have to go with the obvious one of the biggest storylines of round one. It's just Jaylen Brunson overall and his general foul baiting, which I prefer to flopping. But again, just back to him being a technician and the size that he is and how he plays. He is so good at getting inside of people and getting a dribble or getting around the corner on them, and has such amazing body control that he draws an insane amount of fouls. And I expect that to be true in this series as well. And it can be really aggravating. And it's one of those things where I think usually you're not complaining that it wasn't a foul or it was a foul. Instead, it's like, it sucks. That's bullshit. What am I supposed to do? Right? Because he gets in front of you and stops on a dime as he pulls up and almost is fading backwards into the defender,
right,
or moves like that. And it's definitely an aggravating thing for an opposing fan to watch happen over and over again.
All right, now I want you to pick a guy on the Celtics that you think will piss off Knicks fans other than Luke Kornet.
I got to go with your guy, Peyton Pritchard. I think
because of the Jaylen Brunson comparisons.
I am hoping we're not going to hear a lot of that as the game goes on from the announcers, but that would piss Knicks fans off. I think he's just been so good this season overall, and I think he is an absolute spark plug for the team. That I just see a world where the Knicks play your first team tough, right? Maybe we come out of the game and Knicks are hanging tough and you're feeling good. And then Pritchard comes off the bench, and then all of a sudden he hits a three. And then the next play, somehow he sneaks an offensive rebound and kicks it out to an open man who hits another three. And then you blink, and all of a sudden the Celtics are up 10. And you're like, we thought we were hanging. The Celtics go to their bench, and all of a sudden Pritchard sparks a 10-0 run. And I feel like I've seen that story happen a whole bunch this year because of the energy he brings off the bench and the way he contributes in all of the different ways, that that is something that's just deflating for an opposing team.
Yeah, Pritchard, I mean, I think the offensive rebounds, that's the thing that would piss me off the most. And like a guy on your team that I've considered for this award, it's not my choice, but Josh Hart, he's one of those guys that like he's all will out there on the court. Like there's very little skill with Josh Hart. He's just out there like motor on 100 the entire time. And the amount of offensive rebounds that he gets, he's like big plays. And then he has one move where he goes in transition full speed and then just like ends up going to that little like left to right step over layup that he does. Like he's one move. That's all he can do. And like he's able to make a living out of it. Shout out to Josh Hart. That was actually Will's pick for this award. Mine's Cat. I think Cat is just like his antics that he has out there. The fact that I don't think he's that good. And if he has a series in which he just like goes off, that will piss me off more than anything in the world. 'Cause I really just don't believe in Karl-Anthony Towns. I've never believed in him as a player. I think it was a Ringer like top 100 ranking last year where Towns was like 10 spots ahead of Jaylen Brown. And I was just like, how, like in what world is Towns better than JB? And most of it has to do with like the playoff, warts that he has when he goes out there, the lack of control, the terrible decision making, the fouls, like on and on and on. But he's clearly a super talented dude, and he won you guys. Was it game 5 that he stepped up and won the game for you guys? If he went off in this series and it was like all of a sudden I'm like, holy shit, we're going to a game 7 and Towns is a big reason, I think that would piss me off more than anything.
Yep, I can see that in his celebrations and his antics and the way he's
oh my God!
talking to the other team and the refs and all of it. Yeah, it's fair.
All right. Before we do our series predictions, I do want to get to Will's thoughts because he texted me some thoughts, and I want to give everybody the official update on Will. So, those of you that don't know, I'll give a little bit of background about Will. Will is adopted himself. So Will was adopted from Brazil, and he's always wanted to pay it forward. And he's been a parent in waiting for many months at this point. And on Tuesday, he got the call that he is now a dad. So he was able to drive out to San Antonio and meet his baby girl, meet the birth mom, and he's loving life as a new dad. Matt and I are both dads. Matt has 2 kids. I have baby James that everybody knows about. It's actually 10 month birthday for James. He's 10 months old tomorrow. But not to make it about me, but we just want to give Will and Lorena, his beautiful wife, a quick shout. And, I'll let him do, if he wants to do names or whatever, when he gets back on the pod, but Will is happy, healthy, baby's happy and healthy. So shout out to Will. Here are his thoughts in this series. 1, Celtics in 5. 2, Tatum is going to average 39 and 7. His areas of concern: KP's shot, will it come back? Because he did not shoot well in the first series. In Drew's health, he says, as I mentioned before, Josh Hart will easily be this series KCP, in my opinion. I didn't ask what that meant, but maybe it means, because KCP was dog shit in that series, maybe it means that he's just not going to hit any 3-pointers. And then finally, he says Cat has to be the 3rd best player in the series for the Knicks to have any chance. He won't be, but that's the Knicks' path. Shout out to Will for the thoughts. Any thoughts on Will's thoughts, Matt?
First, congratulations to Will and Lorena. So happy for them. Happy to hear that all is well. Can't wait for them to welcome that girl back into their home and to hear all the stories from him on the pod. So first, shout out to them. His thoughts on the series, hard to disagree with a lot of those. Again, I don't know exactly what he was comparing to with KCP. If it's Josh Hart's not going to be able to shoot any threes. That's been a common story at times this year. That has been very true in our Knicks Celtics matchups this year. I think he shot like 15% from 3 in the 4 games we played this year, which big liability when we're trying to go blow for blow. So I could see that being true. I also agree with this last thought that Cat has to be the 3rd best player in the series for the Knicks to have a shot. And I think that there's definitely a world where that could happen. So no disagreements for me. I got a slightly different prediction, but I see where he's coming from.
Okay, before we do predictions, let's do best players in the series draft. Okay, I didn't ask you to prepare for this, but let's just do
Yeah.
it since Will brought it up. I'll give you first pick just because I want to put you on the spot and see who you pick. Best player
Who
in the
is
series.
it? Yeah, it's a hard one where and I'm just coming off this Brunson series where he was so dominant, and coming into the series the question was, hey, who's actually the best series, who's the best player in the Knicks Pistons series? And most people were saying Cade, and I think Brunson blew that out of the water and obviously proved by far Brunson. The reason I think I need to give it to Tatum is the two-way impact that Tatum has. Tatum has been not only fantastic offensively this year and in the last series, even playing on a hurt wrist, but he's also so impactful on the defensive end. And I feel like this year it is more noticeable from the outside than even what I saw in years past. So I think the two-way impact from Tatum, I've probably got to go with him as best player in the series.
Celtics have won 16 straight playoff games when Jason Tatum has a double-double. And that, I mean, he just boards up at this point. And like 39-7, as Will threw out there, I think that's very doable. I would not be surprised if he averages a double-double in this series. Okay, yeah, I mean, Tatum, I think that's a clear choice, number one, just because of everything you just said. And then Jaylen Brunson's number two. It's crazy to think how far this man has come, where I think it was maybe 3 years ago. It was either the first year on the Knicks or the last year on the Mavs, where some NBA player tweeted out, JB has hoop game. And I think it was Kevin Durant. And in my head, I was like, oh, they're talking about Jaylen Brown. And I was like, interesting. I don't know that I would say Jaylen Brown has hoop game. But then I realized they were talking about Jaylen Brunson, and I really started paying attention to him a little bit more just because of that tweet. And I always liked him. And I remember even, you know how long I've just been like a Jaylen Brunson fan. And I think he's been the best point guard in the East for a couple of years now. I tweeted out a few years back that he was a better player than John Morant. And like people were calling me absolutely nuts at the time. And I was like, just wait. Like it might sound crazy right now because everyone thinks John Morant is hot shit. But like, let's just wait and see if I'm right in a couple of years. And like, who would pick John Morant over Jaylen Brunson at this point? Absolutely nobody. Right. So for me to pick Jaylen Brown over Jaylen Brunson, as much as I love Jaylen Brown and his two-way impact, because I think he's the obvious next pick. If I got the next pick, Jaylen Brunson, everything that he can do, looking at, doesn't matter who's in front of him. The fact that he shook Asar Thompson off a screen, like literally not off a screen, not off of a pick, off of the television screen where he wasn't even on there. That says something about how great that guy is. So second pick, I'm going to go Jaylen Brunson.
Yep. Agreed. I think that is, and might be biased here, but for me, that feels like the easy pick for number two. The way he's played, the way he plays late in games, and everything we've seen from him in the playoffs. He was amazing in the playoffs last year. He was amazing in the first round here. So he tends to show up in the big spots too. For number three, I think this is where the draft actually starts. And I think this is where I probably piss you off because I think I am going with Cat.
Okay.
I think that Cat's ability to impact the offensive end of the floor it's unique. It's different. When he has it and it's clicking, he provides value that is maybe unmatched across the league in just the impact that he is able to have in and out on the offensive end as a 7-footer. I know the flip side is he disappears at points on offense, which again, we saw really clearly in the first series. And then the big drag on him is, yes, you've got the offensive upside, but you're pairing that with the defensive liability. I think even with the defensive liability, that potential upside offered on the offensive end puts him at number three for me.
I think, one, you're crazy. Two, I'm just going to thank you for allowing me to pick Jaylen Brown next. But my argument just like still comes down to, would I be more scared about the Knicks if you had Hartenstein or Towns? And my answer would be Hartenstein. Like Jaylen is a better player than Hartenstein. I think he's a better player than Towns. So that's where it like comes down to for me. Obviously, I don't watch every game with Towns. I only get bits and pieces of them. Same thing with you. I know you don't watch every Celtics game. But Jaylen, his two-way impact, and especially how important he's going to be in this series, having to guard Jaylen Brunson, probably guarding Towns at points. I just think he's so special when he's locked in on defense, when he's picking up Jaylen Brunson 94 feet that you'll probably see him do many times. My guess is game one, he starts out guarding Jaylen Brunson full court. And that he's just going to make him work. And I think Towns, as he's probably more skilled than Jaylen is on offense. I think nobody would debate that. But like in the playoffs, it really comes down to the will guys. Like I'm probably more scared in a weird way of Josh Hart than I am of Towns. I'm more scared of those offensive rebounds that like kick out to a Towns 3 than I am of the Towns 3, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I see what you're saying. I think I'm still holding true with my pick at 3, but I see where you're coming from. And also say that concept of Jaylen Brown coming out and potentially on Brunson for 90 feet at the tip of game one is something that I'm excited to see. I'm curious if the Celtics go with that degree of pressure and if they do have JB matched up against him for any amount of the series.
It's scary because JB will probably get in foul trouble. Our JB will probably get in foul trouble if he decides to guard Brunson for 40 minutes.
That's why I feel like that's I'd be surprised if that's where the game started, is that risk of foul trouble early on. I think Holiday's availability maybe impacts that as well. You feel even worse about potential Jaylen Brown foul trouble if you got some questions about Holiday's health and now you're already running with a short bench. But interested to see how they come out.
All right, you got next pick. I think this is where the draft starts.
Okay. I think I have to go with my ex-Knick unicorn. I think I have to go with Porzingis.
Tell me more.
I think similar to what I mentioned to Kat, I think just the unique ability to impact the floor, and for Porzingis is actually on both ends, is such a differentiator and is something that changes the way teams have to play and prepare around them. You've got to draw up your defense specifically to game plan around Porzingis and the impact he can have on the offensive end. And I think his ability to defend the rim is also a really big game changer for you guys as well. Well, I think Kornet is not bad, and I think he's gotten a lot better. And Horford is still in his bag for 40 years old. The rim protection you're able to get out of Porzingis, especially for somebody who's truly a stretch 5, I think is a pretty big defensive differentiator as well. So his two-way impact and the ability to truly impact the way the other teams operate on both ends, I think is really important.
Yeah, I'm going to be really interested to see how the Knicks attack Porzingis, just because I think he's not going to be able to guard Brunson, right? He's going to have to hang back and drop. And say he starts off covering Josh Hart. We're bringing Josh Hart into the action. It's not like that big of a deal for Kristaps to, hedge and then Josh Hart. Like we just make him make plays or send
let
to
him
it.
Brunson. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Let him shoot. So yeah, I mean, interesting pick with Porzingis. I think we didn't get to see it in the playoffs last year because he was hurt, but I'm wondering how long he can be effective in the playoffs. If he's one of those guys where like by the end of the finals, well, I'm hoping the Celtics make it back to the finals this year. It's like, oh, like Horford's actually the big that makes more sense for this team and is like more important because he was last year. Horford was amazing last year. Okay, I'm going to go next pick. I'm going to go Derek White. I was choosing between him and OG because I really respect OG. I just think with Towns's inability to step out and guard, if Derek White goes pick and roll, he's so good at hunting switch pockets. So the moment he comes off of the screen and Towns is back or Towns is late to show, he's going to just pull up and drain threes. And that's what Derek White has become great at. So I think if it wasn't series dependent, I think OG, I would probably pick him over 82 games over Derek White just because I think his defense is like that special, as great as a defender as Derek White is. I think OG is like a top 3 defender, and I think Derek White's probably a top 10 defender. So I'm going to go Derek White for this series just because I think Towns is that exploitable.
Yeah. I think that's another fair call out. Derek White has absolutely cooked the Knicks on exactly that, which is as they put Knicks into action and hunt for favorable matchups, Derek White is one of the people who has really feasted on that against the Knicks this year.
Yeah.
And if something doesn't change in the way they are defending those pick and rolls and cat in action, I would expect the same thing to carry over in this series. I agree. I assumed you were going to go somewhere between Derek White or OG. I'm also curious if you would have picked either or both of those guys over Porzingis. Those were kind of the three I had in mind.
I would have had Porzingis after both of those dudes.
Okay. My next pick will be OG, and I actually feel bad he's got no shine or talk about on this podcast yet because I love OG, and I think he is great. I think he is super underrated as a player overall as well. And I think his defensive impact is underrated as well. It's good to hear you call him out as potentially a top 3 defender. I don't think he's recognized that way nationally. He did not receive those kind of votes for best defender in the NBA either, but I think his impact is that big. One of the reasons I haven't highlighted him in any of our X factors or conversation yet is because he's so reliable. I almost pencil him in for I kind of know what I'm going to get out of him, and he's going to do a great job defending Tatum. He will cover Tatum as well as anybody in the league can guard Tatum. He'll do a great job on Jaylen Brown and anybody he gets matched up against. They will drive for switches, so he won't be matched up against either of them for too long stretches at a time. But when he is matched up against them, I expect them to have a really hard time. On top of that, he just causes some chaos on defense. So he's going to get his hands on balls. He's going to have deflections. He's going to have a steal or two and a block or two every game as well. So that impact is really huge for the Knicks. Considering some of our other defensive liabilities, OG is the glue that holds the team together. The reason we've been able to operate as, I forget where they ended the season, maybe around the 14th best defense in the league, is because OG is one of the best 2 or 3 defenders in the league holding us together. And I also think he's taken a step forward offensively this year. Maybe we've seen a little bit more out of him. He's not a go get your own bucket kind of guy. He's not a create on your own, but really strong off of 1 or 2 dribbles. His shooting has continued to get better, solid 3-point shooter. So he'll score his 15 or 20 a game, and he'll have a game or 2 in the series, maybe where he pushes to 25 or 30.
Hey, we got a comment from one William Ware. He says Tatum is going to be the mayor of NYC by the end of this series. And he says, thank you, Phil. Will, it's good to see that you are tuning in. You're doing the Alex thing where you have the link. You could just pop on, but you're leaving a comment, and we appreciate any comment that we can get on these streams. All right, we're almost at an hour here, Matt. So let's just really quickly, let's just, without giving any commentary, let's just draft the next couple of guys. I'm going to go Drew Holiday. Who you got next?
Mikal Bridges.
Okay, I'm going to go Al Horford.
I'm going to go Josh Hart.
Peyton Pritchard.
That's who I was debating between. At this point, we're through our top 10 here, right? Now we're getting into
stop
benches.
there. We could stop. If you want to give one more, you can. Just to give some Knicks player that won't matter a shout. Okay. All right. Let's
the hard part about not having a lot of depth.
Yeah. Let's go real quick series predictions. What you got?
I got the Celtics in 6. And I think the Knicks are going to have to do some work to get to 6. Okay. Unfortunately, I think that the Celtics offense is too much. The way that team is designed and the way you guys operate, it's just not a good matchup for the Knicks and who they are. And unfortunately, that putting Cat into high action 50 times a game, I think is something that Knicks aren't going to be able to account for.
Will says he wants to hear the Landry Shamet versus Baylor Shireman debate. I mean, both of them have terrible mustaches at times, so that's cool. But yeah, I mean, I gotta go. It's either Celtics in 5 or Celtics in 6, just because I want to see a Madison Square Garden deathly silent I'm going to go Celtics in 6 with you there, just because I think that would be really special. And I know you're going to try and get to a game back in New York. I would highly recommend that it's not game 6.
It's game 4.
Okay. You got tickets already?
I got tickets. Yep.
Nice, man. So game 4 is when? Yeah, let's actually talk about just real quick for everybody. We have game 1 is Monday, May 5th at 7 Eastern. Game 2 is going to be Wednesday, May 7th at 7 Eastern. And then game 3 is Saturday, time TBD. Game 4 will be Monday, May 12th, time TBD. So you'll be at the Monday game.
Yep. Game 4, I am hopeful, and I'll say optimistic that the Knicks will be putting up a fight in games 1 through 3. So we're not talking about a closeout in game 4 at Madison Square Garden.
All right, my man. Well, hopefully we can have you on again at some point during the series. This was fun. I appreciate you staying up late with me tonight. And once again, shout out to Will. Shout out to everybody that was here in the chat. Phil, Landon. I think I saw maybe a Luis in there. Is that what I saw? Yeah, Luis Reyes. Appreciate everybody staying tuned, locked in with us here. If you have any questions or any suggestions, you can always follow us at Green Envy Pod or email us at Celtics Noise at gmail.com. All right, everybody. It's late. We'll see you soon. Celtics in 6. Peace, everybody. Thanks, Matt.
Thanks for having me.